Welcome back to another one of the studies in Gospel of John. John 15:18 to 16:4 is our lesson for today. The disciples' relationship with the world. So the disciples' relationship with the world. Jesus is in the upper room. He's been telling them he's about to leave, and now he's going to talk about how the world's going to respond to their leadership. Now, remember the last lesson we learned about the fact that the Son loves them. He calls them to therefore love one another. So he's about to tell them that there's going to be hostility from the world, but they need to remember that the Father and the Son love them. They're to love one another, and they can do this. They can get through this. So the first point we're going to see is that the world hates Jesus, therefore the world hates his followers, and that's verses 8 to 20. So he starts off by saying, if the world hates you, know that it has hated me before it hated you. Now I'm going to show you two reasons that the world hates Christians and that the world hated the original apostles. First, the world hates them because it hated Christ before it hated them. So the world hates Christians because they hate Christ. They hate what Christ teaches, what he stands for. Now they might say they love Jesus and they like some of his teaching, but the totality of who he is and what he taught, at their unconverted heart, they hate him. And therefore then they hate his followers or anyone who speaks in his name. So if the world hates you, know that it's hated me before it hated you. If you were of the world would love you as its own. But because you're not of the world, but I chose you out of the world, therefore the world hates you. So another reason that the world hates us is because we've been chosen out of the world to follow Jesus. So they hate Jesus, and they hate the fact that we represent him. So again, for you who are teaching other people, I'm not going to give a bunch of illustrations. I'm not going to give a bunch of applications. That's for you to do in your own studies. I'm just trying to help you make sense of the passage and what's going on here. So here in this first point, the world hates Jesus, and therefore the world hates his followers. And we have two reasons why that's true. One, we're not of the world, and second, we belong to Jesus. One, the world hates Jesus, and second, we actually belong to him. So this is important for the disciples to know, because right off the bat, as Jesus says he's going to leave, he wants them to be aware of what that's going to mean between them and the world. There's going to be hostility. Now, we take that for granted. We know that the world hates Christians, but this would have hit them pretty hard. You would think that if you have the words of life, if you've been following Jesus, if you can show people the beauty of having a relationship with Jesus, that the world's going to love you. Well, here he keeps it real. He tells them what's actually going to happen. And that's important for them to understand as they go on and carry out his ministry. Next, we go to verses 21 to 25, and we learn that the world doesn't just hate Jesus, doesn't just hate us, but the world actually hates the Father as well. Verse 21, but all these things they'll do to you on account of my name, because they do not know him. Now I'm going to circle all the references to the Father here. The world does not know the Father. So they'll do these things. They'll hate you on account of me, Jesus speaking, because they don't know my Father who sent me. If I had not come and spoken to them, they would not have been guilty of sin. But now they have no excuse for their sin. Whoever hates me hates my Father also, verse 23. So follow the chain. They'll hate you, disciples. They'll hate you, Christian, because they hate Jesus. They hate Jesus because they hate the Father. So this is what he's bringing out here in the second point. The world hates the Father. Verse 24, if I had not done among them the works that no one else did, they would not be guilty of sin. But now they've seen and hated both me and the Father. They've seen and hated both me and the Father. Again, as we've seen in the Gospel of John, Jesus connecting airtight his ministry to the Father's ministry. He says what the Father has him say. The Father sends him. He represents the Father. The Father gives him the Holy Spirit. He does miracles in the Father's name. They are lockstep, Father and the Son. So if they hate you, disciples, it's because they hated me, Jesus saying. They hate me, it's because they hate the Father who sent me. Again, we see reference to the Father here at the end of verse 24. So they don't know the Father. They hate the Father. They hate me and the Father. Verse 25, but the word that is written in their law must be fulfilled. They hated me without a cause. This is where you can have someone in your group go and read Psalm 35:19 or Psalm 69, verse 4. And it's the prophecy there in verse 25. So again, what's happening here? They're going to hate you guys. And it's because they hate me. And it's because they hate the Father. And they don't know that I'm connected to the Father. They won't admit that. So again, Jesus is showing that the world is going to hate the disciples and all they stand for because they hate him and they hate the Father. Third point, 15:26-27. The Holy Spirit will continue to bear witness through the disciples. So you might think that that'd be enough for the disciples. Okay, how can we even prove victorious? There's so much animosity. They're going to hate us. They hate the Son. They hate the Father. Is it even worth it? Yes, it is. Because the Holy Spirit will continue to bear witness through them. God's Holy Spirit, God himself, God the Holy Spirit, will empower their ministry, teach them what they need to know so that they can then go on and teach the followers of God. So amidst the hatred, know that the Spirit is behind this work. Verse 26, but when the Helper comes, so we've been talking about Father and Son in this passage, but now we're introduced to the Helper, the Holy Spirit. When the Helper comes, whom I will send to you from the Father, the Spirit of truth, who proceeds from the Father, he will bear witness about me. So notice the Father, Son, Spirit, all behind this work. The Father sends him, the Son sends him. The Father sends him, and he's meant to shine a light on the life and ministry of Jesus. So the Holy Spirit being given to them is a big deal because of the Spirit's connection to the Father and the Son. So yes, you'll be hated, but you're doing a work from the Father, from the Son, and the Holy Spirit empowers that work. And notice, the Holy Spirit bears witness about the Son, and they will also bear witness about the Son. So the Spirit will empower them to actually bear this witness. Because you've been with me from the beginning, because he chose these 12, these 11, minus Judas, these 11 to go and bear witness. So the Father and the Son send the Spirit. The Spirit bears witness about Jesus, opens people's eyes to Jesus, and the disciples themselves would be bearing witness to Jesus by the power of the Holy Spirit. So yes, points 1 and 2, you'll be hated because the Father's hated, but you got a work to do, and the Spirit's been given to you for that work. And why does he want them to know all this? That's in our fourth point, chapter 16, verses 1-4. Because being forewarned is forearmed. He wants them to know this ahead of time, so they're prepared. They're prepared not only to suffer and be hated, but they're also prepared to do this ministry-inspired work. Chapter 16, verse 1. Notice Jesus saying, I've said these things. I've told you all about this hatred. I've said all these things to keep you from falling away. So to know that hardship is coming helps you endure the hardship. If you're blindsided by it, you might be tempted to throw in the towel. So he's graciously telling them life's going to be hard for them. He's graciously telling them that the Spirit's behind this ministry. So he will keep them then from falling away. So if they know ahead of time, if they are forewarned, they are forearmed. They can get through this by the power of God. How will they be tempted to fall away? How might they want to throw in the towel? Well, because verse 2, they'll put you out of the synagogues. This is one way you're going to be tempted to fall away. They'll keep you from being put out of the synagogues. They'll excommunicate you. And as we know, this is a big deal in the social life even of the Jews of that time. So they're going to be tempted to fall away. They need to be prepared for this because what's going to happen is their opponents are going to seek to kick them out of the synagogues. Indeed, the hour is coming when whoever kills you, so not just excommunicate them, but they also will kill them or try to kill them. Whoever kills you will think he's offering service to God. So your opposition will be from religious people who claim to be followers of God themselves. I need you to be forewarned so that you're forearmed. Know that the persecution is going to come from the religious, not just from the world. You need to expect this. Verse 3, and they will do these things because they have not known the Father, nor have they known me. But again, notice here I'm going to circle this again because I circled it in verse 1, verse 4. But I've said these things to you. Notice the repetition. I've said these things to you that when their hour comes, when these things start to happen, when they seek to kick you out, when they seek to kill you in the name of following God, when their hour comes, you may remember that I told them to you. So 3 times he's focusing them on what he's told them. Let these words, guys, ring in your ears. I told you this would happen. You're forewarned so that you're forearmed. So I think some good application for us is to understand that the disciples were persecuted, but the disciples were also empowered by the Spirit to do this work. Now, the apostles, the disciples are off the scene today, but the same truth is true in the Christian life as well. We're not friends of the world, not because we wouldn't want that, but because they don't want it, because they hate the Son and they hate the Father and everything they stand for. And today, even all throughout the world, Christians are persecuted, killed, even sometimes by other religious people, so to speak. And so this preparation for the disciples is appropriate for us to take as well. We've been forewarned, and so we can be forearmed. So know that opposition will come when you engage in the work of the ministry given by the Holy Spirit. And that's what the Lord's trying to tell his disciples and prepare them for in this lesson.